Are your ad campaigns lighting up the dashboard, but not the pipeline? That's bullspend, and marketers are calling it out in Dashboard Confessions.
My boss asked for results, so I opened my dashboard for the only positive-sounding metric I had: impressions.
Cut the bull spend. See revenue, not just reach. LinkedIn delivers the highest return on ad spend of major ad networks. Advertise on LinkedIn. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a $250 credit. Go to linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Come on, for picture! First positions, everyone! Yo, go!
And action! Hello and welcome to episode 344 of the Filmmakers podcast. This is a podcast where we talk filmmaking, from indie film to studio films to high-end TV and everything in between. How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to F it up, in our very, very humble opinion. I am Giles Alderson. I'm a writer, director, and producer. And on today's show, we have Lorenzo di Bonaventura. He is a huge film producer. He's a Hollywood film producer, best known for producing G.I. Joe and the Transformers series. His films have earned over $7 billion, that's right, billion, at the box office. He was president of worldwide production for Warner Brothers. His tenure there included discovering The Matrix and getting the rights to the Harry Potter books. Some of his credits as a producer include Four Brothers, Shooter, Transformers, Stardust, G.I. Joe, Jack Ryan, Bumblebee, Pet Sematary, Snake Eyes, Salt, Red, Man on a Ledge, Only the Brave, The Last Stand, Deepwater Horizon, American Assassin, Plane, Constantine, The Meg, Doom, Derailed, Side Effects, 1408, and that's just some of them. And very recently, Transformers Rise of the Beasts, which is what myself and Dom Lenoir, my fellow host for the day, sat down to talk to Lorenzo about. I mean, it was such a delight to talk to him. He was so open and gave us so much knowledge and information of what it's like in the trenches of making Hollywood movies. Myself and Dom sat down at the Corinthia Hotel, deep in London near the Thames River, and we talked about what it's like making Hollywood movies. We talked about filming huge set pieces and the restrictions you can get by doing so, why they decided to shoot in Peru, what he looks for in directors, how they find the Transformers stories, and he gives you some amazing advice. He also talks about why you should treat people well, why psychology is vital for a producer, and why you should read history books on filmmaking. He also talks about how hard it is getting a good script and why it takes time, and why perseverance is key, how you can protect yourself on a film set, how he raises finance for his films, which he still has to do, and where he finds his material. I don't know what else to tell you. This man is a legend, and it's such an honour to have him on the Filmmakers podcast. So I really hope you get so much from this. Do send us a message on Twitter, on Instagram, at the Filmmakers Pod, and tell us what you thought, and just say thank you. And a huge shout out to Paramount for getting us this chat. Not only did they get this chat with Lorenzo di Bonaventura, but also we had a chat with the director of Transformers Rise of the Beast, Stephen Capel Jr., and it stars Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback. That will be coming up for you on part 2, because there was so much. It would have been an hour and a half, and I thought, why not put this into 2 parts? Make this a special with Lorenzo, and then on Friday we have a special with the director and the stars. Anthony Ramos, who was a lead in The Heights. He starred in Hamilton. Dominique Fishback, she starred in Judas and the Black Messiah. And they both sat down with myself and Dom, and we had a right laugh, and also gave us so much brilliant knowledge and information about shooting huge films like this. And Stephen Capel Jr. is the director of Creed 2. But more on those when I do the intro for you on Friday. So how have you been? How's your week been so far? I know it's only Tuesday, but hey, you've had all of Monday to sort stuff out, to send emails, to write a new page of your script. And what about last week? That was a full 4 days. What are you doing in the week coming up to go out there and make your films and to make it happen for you. You know, really think about who you're targeting this week. Maybe that's the way to do it. Maybe you're going to reach out to someone for some advice. That might kickstart you. Do you know what? Go on IMDb and look for an email of someone you really respect and go, do you know what? I'm just going to send an email and say, hey, have you got 5 minutes? I'd love some advice about how I can get my film made. And make sure it's someone you really care about and someone whose films you really respect. And write that as your headline. I love your films, mate. Look, if you've got 5 minutes, I'd love to pick your brains. They might not answer because they're very busy people, but hey, go for it. Go for all sorts this week. Go for everything. If you want to be a filmmaker, no one is knocking on your door. No one is making stuff happen for you but you. So do it. Go out there and make things happen. That's how all the greats do it, and that's what you've got to do too. If you do like this podcast, please tell your pals. This is how we grow. This is how we get these amazing guests on, and hopefully we can keep doing that for you. And I can spend the time doing them as well. So do tell your pals. It's lovely when we get lovely responses as well. So do jump on iTunes/Apple and give us a nice review. Why not? Why not? I'll shout you out for it. Oh, and then next Tuesday's episode, we have The Greatest Days director Koki Detroit joining us. The Greatest Days is the Take That musical, which is out in cinemas now. And that film, me and Dom loved. But that's coming up for you next Tuesday. For now, this is the Hollywood producer, Lorenzo di Bonaventura, talking about his latest film, Transformers Rise of the Beasts, which is out now in cinemas, and what it's like as a Hollywood producer. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
So, how are you feeling? Welcome.
Well, you know, when the movie plays well to its audience, you feel pretty good.
Yes.
we were at the premiere last night.
Oh, you
and I can say it was one of the biggest premieres I've seen in Leicester Square, and the reactions were amazing. There was lots of oohs and ahs, lots of sort of diehard fan moments in the audience when certain things happen. We won't go too much into spoilers.
Yes.
But it seemed like a very good response for sure.
Yeah, it's been, you know, we've been Singapore, Mexico City, New York, you know, we're going all over the place. And the audiences are just really reacting like that, which is pretty good feeling, I got to tell you.
It must be amazing. You've had such an amazing career as well, you know, going back, making movies must just be incredible. How does this one compare? Oh, can you even compare them? How does it feel?
Not really. They're kind of like comparing your kids a little bit, but the experience
You always have a
them,
favorite.
Yeah, you just can't.
But you
tell.
can't tell anyone.
Exactly right. Because the other kids get upset with you.
Indeed,
you know?
yes.
You know, what was very different here was going to Peru. And going to Peru for such a long period of time. And then on top of it, we're like in the jungle for 30 days, you know, sweating. It was so hot. And then next thing you know, we're at 10,000, 12,000 feet shooting. So one, you couldn't breathe. The other, you couldn't get cool. It was an amazing adventure, really.
Yeah, it must have been. I remember seeing that yesterday at the premiere on the screen and just seeing Peru, and I want to pronounce it right, Machu Picchu.
You didn't pronounce it.
I know, I wanted to. And seeing that, I went, oh my God, they got to film there. And that was my instant reaction. I was like, is that real? Is that CG? No, they were there.
Yeah.
Tell us about actually organising
Well, it's a
that.
magical place, first of all. And apparently they have only allowed it once before, and it didn't go well.
I heard.
So they banned it for a very long period of time, and there were a lot of rules about how you shot there, because
No real Transformers.
no real Transformers, although there were some articles in the Peru papers going, how dare they bring Transformers up onto, they're going to ruin it. And it's like, we tried to explain to them, no. And it's like, it was really, people were irate, you know. Wow. And then, I mean, what was interesting was, that's about 9,000 feet, we're at the highest, I think. And, you know, you're hefting equipment up there, but you're not allowed to bring cranes. You're not allowed to bring a lot of the things that we use, batteries, all that stuff, food. None of that. So you had to go up and down and up and down. And we also created some rigs out of PVC piping.
Right.
Which we put on the shoulders of our cameramen. So it was like we had a mini crane or something, just because we had a little bit higher then. And so it was just, it really made you feel like you were doing something not only incredibly cool, because what a place, but also I'm sure the originators of film must have felt like, this is the first time anybody's done this, you know? And it's kind of a cool feeling when you're breaking new ground,
Yeah, certainly.
or maybe old ground in this case.
Yes, but how do you get permissions for somewhere like that? And I mean, like you say, they very rarely allow it for anyone. As filmmakers, this is a Filmmakers podcast. As a producer, how do you even start to try and get permission for somewhere like that?
Well, you have to follow the rules. If you try to cut in line, if you try to go above the right people's heads in any country, it never works. Yeah. So there's a ministry there that's particularly in charge of that. And we went through the process. And I think if we had only shot in Machu Picchu, they would have said no. But they recognized that we're showing the jungle, we're showing Cusco, we're showing the
Culture.
And so it wasn't like we were there, I think from their perspective, just to exploit Machu Picchu. We were there to show the country and the people. And so it took a while, but we got there.
Amazing.
You did, yeah.
And they, once they said yes, they were incredibly protective of the place. And it was interesting, like, you look at the stones, and it's very important to call them stones, not rocks.
Okay, good to know.
Okay. You look at the stones and you think, oh, I can sit on that. You're not allowed to sit on it. You're not allowed to lean against it. It's like
Ultra sacred, yeah.
Yeah. Which is great. And it kind of fits in the motif of the movie in the sense of cultures colliding, if you would. And it's just an ancient culture in this case.
Did you have any challenges with altitude sickness with the crew or the cast? Like, how did you kind of get around those kind of problems?
Everybody had that problem one day or another, and if you started forgetting to drink water, you really got hammered. It took a while. We tried to go slow and do all the right things, but eventually everybody got hit with something in the jungle, which was very specific, and something in altitude. There'd be a day where you're just like, I can't go. I just got to lie down. So, yeah, that was part of the drill.
So I suppose on this sort of level of production, it's having the infrastructure to have backups or the sort of flexibility to like move to like lighter scenes or different scenes, maybe shoot a different cast member if they're out. It's that kind of, I suppose you have to give yourself a lot of leeway.
You definitely have to be nimble. And, Peru is not a country that has a big film infrastructure. So we had to pretty much either bring what we were going to do or just sort of go with the flow and see what happens, which is true in a lot of countries. It was interesting. We had some Peruvian crew that were really great. And since you've seen the movie, the carnival scene was 750 extras, which was really interesting during COVID.
Yes, I imagine. So it wasn't a real carnival that you were sort of jumping on top of, because COVID was, like you say, around, so there probably wasn't a carnival.
That all the costumes and all the floats are what they use in their carnival.
Right.
They just brought them out for us. So in a sense, we recreated it.
Got you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So there wasn't anything sort of pre-existing that you sort of tapped into certain areas and...
We wanted to, but I don't think it would have been manageable.
No.
Because then, now you got a crowd going on, and what are these idiot filmmakers doing here? Get out of the way. Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
So,
You've got robots flying around.
Everywhere. Yeah. What are the idiot filmmakers? There's robots.
What is that guy right here? What's going on here? Yeah. No, you had to have control. But, it was funny because the script originally was set in Rio, and that was Carnival.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to go to Machu Picchu, and I kind of felt like we've seen Rio a lot, but we haven't seen Peru, and we definitely haven't seen Machu Picchu. Definitely. So I said to the writer, put Machu Picchu in there. And somehow it stayed.
I'll just have to get permission later, right?
Yeah. And then what was crazy was they had their own version of a carnival. So it was always written in, it's a different carnival.
Yeah, and equally as rich culture as well.
Yes, equally as rich. And on that, you picked a brilliant director with Stephen Cable Jr., but yet, he'd done Creed 2 before that, but not necessarily anything as big as this. Transformers is its own beast, literally, to do a pun. So why him, for you as a producer to pick someone like him as a director? What was it? What was the things that worked for you?
Well, you have to go back to Bumblebee for a second, because Bumblebee, I think, was very successful in creating an intimate, emotional experience for the audience. And we really wanted to bring that into the bigger scale. And so we were looking for directors that had a great sense of emotion, great sense of character development. And if you look at his work in television and in movies, he draws really great characters and really understands, I'll say, emotions of humanity. He's got a very strong sense of humanity individually. So when we met with him, that was our thinking. We can help teach him, offer him the tools of technology, and we've done it a lot, so we know how to sort of bring somebody up to speed a little bit. And we do have somebody in our back pocket named Michael Bay who can explain to a director, director, what's the fear, what's the tricks, what's that as a director. But what really sold the deal was he grew up with Beast Wars. And so he couldn't believe it. And I think one of the satisfying aspects of this movie, and I think it's of the Transformers series, is we take it really seriously in terms of its execution and in terms of its mythology. We're not taking ourselves too seriously, but I think one of the reasons why these movies look good is in part because we really own the DNA of it. And so knowing that he had that in him, I knew one of the hardest parts of owning the character is that.
And sort of going on to that point, because I mean, I grew up on the Transformers movie. I used to watch the TV series. That was like,
great.
You know,
You're
ecstasy.
making me feel old.
Ecstasy to me as a kid. Yeah.
I hear you're doing an animation, though. Is that right?
We are.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. But how do you balance? I mean, this one to me felt like one of the more closely linked to. I mean, you've got Unicron. You've got a lot of moments with like Bumblebee. I'm not going to go too much into it, but you've got a lot that sort of fits into that original part of it. How much do you, as a producer, try and lean into the original source material versus creating something new? And how much was that collaboration with Steven to kind of, you know, with what he knew and what he liked versus what you were kind of trying to do as a new franchise?
Well, Hasbro has a book that we call the Transformers Bible, and it literally has the entire lore, which is stuff that even hardcore fans don't even know because it's so obscure, some of it, right? So every time we go back and we reread it, because there's several things about it. One is we want to be true to the mythology, but also it like refreshes you about what's there. And so ideas come back. They come in and out in these movies sometimes. You know, we were debating the Maximals for a long time. But how do you... cars and animals don't fit so naturally together. So how do you find an environment where that made sense, which is one of the reasons we went to Peru, was because jungle is where these kinds of animals can exist, right?
Animals, yeah.
Yes.
They can't hide in an urban environment the way our Autobots can. And so, you know, we toss around ideas for a long time. Like, we have several ideas right now about where else we could go for a spectacular sort of adventure for the audience and for ourselves. So those will sit around, they'll simmer. But fundamentally on this one, we wanted to bring in the Maximals. And that was the challenge, was to put these, I'll say, even though they're related, they're different cultures in a way, right? And so that was one of the interesting sort of clashes we had to figure out. And what was I think particularly surprising is when we first did it, it seemed too easy. Like, it just didn't feel natural that these guys have never met each other. Just like, hey, let's go and kill the bad guy.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? You know? And so it's why we put hostility in that opening scene, is because you needed to earn a little bit this union, if you would. And even so, as you know, since you've seen the movie, we keep alive the distrust notion amongst many of them, because our feeling was that's kind of how you'd feel.
Yeah.
Going on to producing then and making movies like this, is there any kind of, like you mentioned there, you've got Michael Bay in your corner as well, etc. But you've been involved, you know, a long time with these and a long time in making movies. Is there any kind of tips for our audience in terms of producing that you've learned over the time that will be very useful, not just with the big franchises, but also the other...
I've made a lot of small movies too.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, I think the first thing is you cannot be dogmatic. You got to be really flexible, because no matter how well you plan it, it goes wrong. And so I think the biggest tip in a way is the psychology of it is super important. How you treat people is, how do you get, you know, in Transformers case, we have over 3,000 people. And if you look at the carnival scene, there just in that scene is 750 people plus crew plus. So it's an interesting challenge to get everybody to move in the same direction. Try talking 4 or 5 people into going in the same direction. Suddenly you go, here's 1,000. Now what? Yeah. So I would say that psychology is actually a huge part of how you produce. That's I really when I talk to film schools, and I always say to them, while you're at film school, take a psychology course. That's the one that's going to really help you. It really will. Plus, we're a bunch of neurotic creatives. So, it's probably the best training ground a psychiatrist could ever have.
Well, it's very true. I think it applies to directing as well. I mean, I took psychology and media and film at university because those were kind of the things that interested me about people and storytelling. And you can't be a good storyteller if you're not a good understander of people. And if you have any kind of loose chain or situations that people aren't getting on, a film is not going to be successul. I imagine it's even worse on a bigger.
I would say this: it will be successful by will, but it will not be a fun experience. Do you know what I mean? I've worked on or been an executive on a lot of films where some principals don't get along particularly well. It's just unpleasant. Yeah. But the truth is, you got to motivate most of the people, if not all the people. But I do think also, I read a lot of history books of Hollywood. I still do. I'm reading Robert De Niro, the unauthorized biography. Sorry, Bob.
He's listening. Don't worry.
And you get tips. You just do it. More than anything, you sort of you begin to understand the flow of it, and you begin to understand the power structure of it. So yes, there's the execution, but there's also you've got to convince people. You got to understand who you have to convince to get a project made, and those books offer really valuable stuff.
Yeah, I've been reading quite a few of those old Hollywood ones as well.
And I don't think there's any particular secret. You do have to enjoy story.
Yes.
And care about what it is. And what I mean by that is if you try to be cynical, this will be successful, you're dead. You got to just know it and then hope it's successful.
So on a franchise like this, obviously you've worked on Bumblebee. There's a kind of a template for the other Transformer movies. You've done Hollywood. How does the process of getting this up and running as a sort of a franchise, as a single film, come about? Is it okay? Well, we want to do a Transformer movie every year, every 2 years. What do we want to do this time? How does is there board meetings? How does the actual nuts and bolts of let's make this movie?
Well, fundamentally, the financier, the studio, is the one that's going to dictate to a large extent timeframes. We'd be dead if we tried to do one every year, because this one took 2.5 years. And now we were dealing with COVID, so it's a little bit, but most of the time it's full 2 years. And so I prefer about a 3-year time frame, but often now people are more anxious to keep making movies. So sometimes we're working on a 2-year time frame. It's super hard because it doesn't leave you a lot of room to be wrong. It takes a while to develop a good script. It just doesn't happen. Every once in a while you get super lucky, but generally speaking, it's a heavy lift and takes a period of time before you can even do it. And I think with what is particularly difficult for a studio is you have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars before you really see anything. You're committed to not only the production budget, but you're committed to the marketing budget, which is sometimes bigger. So, it takes a while to get a corporation behind that. The good news for Transformers is so far it's been very successful, and so they are anxious to keep us going. But, individual films themselves it's so interesting. I did a movie called Side Effects. We had that script for 9.5 years.
Wow.
Could not get it made. Couldn't get it made. And that's where I think perseverance is probably the number one thing you got to recognize is rejection. It's a business of rejection.
Yeah.
So you better have perseverance, because otherwise you're going to fold up your tent and get out real fast.
Mm-hmm. That's so true, and so lovely that you say that as well, especially coming from yourself. It's so successful. That'll help our listeners so much. What happens when something goes wrong on a set, or something goes wrong, like you say, you're about to make something, but maybe we talk about set life as well. How do you deal with major problems? Obviously, you're trying to put those fires out beforehand, but then something else happens. What do you do? What's your techniques?
I don't know if it's really a technique, but it's staying calm under fire is definitely. You try to surround yourself. First of all, the way you protect yourself is to hire professionals. If they really know their job, the chance of things going wrong, drastically wrong, get reduced a lot. And I do think the bigger movies, because it's such a big crew, I said to Steven when he came aboard, I said, look, a lot of movies, smaller movies, there's the general, the director, and then there's some lieutenants. Correct, yeah. On a movie like Transformers, there's a lot of lieutenant generals. And if you don't give them the ability to make decisions, you'll freeze up and crash because it's too many decisions. No one person can make that many decisions. And so I think for a director, what's very different is they have to give up a certain amount of control. And the way that gets comfortable is by really making sure everybody's in line with the vision. So for me, with a script, for instance, what happens if the script starts going wrong during production, right? The director, generally speaking, doesn't have the time to stop and work on the script. So if I'm taking the writer aside and working with them, I got to be 95% in sync with the director, so that when I'm communicating to the writer, I'm pretty close to 100% sure that that's where the director wants us to go. Or if not, I'm close enough that all they need to do is a tweak.
So you're very creatively involved all the way
Very
through
much
it.
so. Yeah. No, it's some of the fun of this, that and puzzle solving.
Yeah.
The old Sudoku. In the
For
corner.
sure.
And do you ever have situations where you go through the pitching phase of thing, maybe with the director, or it could be some other creative, and they seem to be on the page, or they've pitched a certain way, and then you get to the shoot and they're trying to do it a different way.
Yep.
Like, how do you deal with that? Has that happened a lot?
I think earlier in my career, I didn't listen closely enough. And I think one of the things we all do naturally is we believe that over time, the other person's going to come around to your point of view. And it's just not true. So you need to really listen to whoever you're hiring, especially a writer or a director, or an actor, I guess, to a certain degree, but that's not really what we interview an actor about. You really have to listen carefully what they're saying to you at first, because that's where they're going to go. And you're not going to, unless they run into the brick wall you see coming, which, having been around long enough, sometimes I can see the brick wall. And some directors can hear you going, you're going to hit a brick wall. And some just can't hear it until they run into the wall. So, which I understand. I probably, certainly when I was younger, I ran into a lot of brick walls and probably didn't listen very well. And
that is interesting, isn't it? That the youth of it, you go, it's all right, I can do it. And actually, sometimes that's inspiring as well.
Yes.
Because you need someone to be charging and charging.
100%, and pushing the limit.
And pushing and learning and failing by learning. As long as they do that, as long as they do sort of learn by their failings, it's the ones that don't is the bigger issue.
Well, and it's also, it's attitude. Stephen recognized he did not have the ego that said, oh, I can't admit I've never really done a visual effects, So he could listen to the DP or the producer or the visual effects supervisor in a way that I've seen other people fail at, because, their ego did not allow taking in something that you did, and I said to him from the beginning, look, I've seen your movies. You've never had to tangle with this. It's okay.
Right.
We're going to give you all the tools, and then you're going to figure out how to make it your own. And then when you see the movie, it has a, technologically really strong, but it also has his twist on it.
I suppose it's about surrounding the sort of in this case, like a very strong creative drama director with the Hollywood machine, and everyone who's done the Hollywood machine knows how to do these jobs to a very, very high level. Can I ask you about how in some of your earlier, maybe non-studio movies, how you maybe struggled with getting stuff financed, getting it made, because that's kind of the other flip side of this.
Sure. You know what? Both sides are really hard to do. Like, it's just hard to get movies made, period. I think having worked inside a studio, I understand the mechanisms more than I understand the indie world. I've done a fair number of independent movies, and I think the trickiest part for me in an independent movie is that you don't know the money's real until it starts flowing, and even then you're not 100% sure. And that's a really interestingly destabilizing feeling. You know when the studio says, yes, the money's there, it's coming, you don't have to sweat that part of it. I think also what I found very interesting in the independent world is every foreign film finance company has a completely different point of view of which star means what, which director means what, right? So, in fact, I actually talked to somebody last night who just did an independent film and never got paid. So I understand the sort of insecurities that brings about process. If you don't know you're going to have the money, that's really a hard thing. But I find the hardest thing is every film finance company seems to have a completely different point of view of what's meaningful. Is the director meaningful? Well, I think he is, or she is. And they're like, half of them are yes, or a quarter of them are yes, quarter are sort of mixed, and half no. Same with the stars. So I found that's what's really tricky in putting together a movie. The process once you start, not really different. And whether you're a big movie or small movie, you never have enough money. So there's a real similarity in that.
So what do you do about that then? Like you say, streamers are saying they're perfect if you're just bringing it streaming, or, that actor's brilliant if you're just doing movies. How do you balance that? What's the way to get through that right now?
Well, in my case, what I do is I develop a lot. Right. So hopefully one script's moving quicker than another.
Yes, I noticed in your IMDb there was a lot in pre-development.
It's always a little bit exaggerated, but the truth of the matter is, I guess in a way, I'm not hedging my bets, but I am
hedging your bets.
I'm hedging my bets. There you go. Exactly. There you go. So there it is. No, but the truth of the matter is they move at different paces, scripts too. So if you're betting everything on one or two scripts, you're in trouble. Yes, because nobody's that good.
Yeah, and I suppose things do change, and different people you expect to like one thing, like something else, and it's a surprise. So
for
you've got to
sure.
have a couple of things ready.
And that's true in television. It's true in a lot of places, but I find it's the most erratic in foreign financing. And also, what I find very interesting is the foreign part aspects to it. They tend to value actors in particular that we think are a little past their prime. But because they have a track record, they're willing to bet.
That's interesting.
So it is interesting because you go like, oh, really? Yeah. That guy? I mean, like a few years ago, we would have made a movie with him in a studio. But now, and often they're the most valuable to them. And it is one of the things where you just got to accept that's the reality.
Yeah. Do you ever look outside of the studio system now for material such as, from writers, from anyone else? How do people get in touch with you, or do you sort of go through? Is it through the system? So to speak?
Know what? Unfortunately, all of us, if we've been around long enough, we've been sued by somebody who claims that we stole their idea. So we will not accept material from people unless it comes from an agent. But in my case, for instance, I love reading. So I'm constantly reading books and magazines, and I try not to read everything through the eyes of, is this a movie? Is this a television series? But you can't help it a little bit, right?
Yes.
But I find, actually, funny enough, what I pay real attention to is when I go through the airports, which I do a lot, is I always go through the bookstore. Because that tells you what people are looking at. And actually, I found the Vince Flynn series that way, American Assassin. Wow. I made a movie called Derailed, which was a book that I read, and it was out of the, and I'm reading the captions of the books going, oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, that sounds interesting. So you can find movies in the airports when you're killing times. That's what I do.
I love that because you can see it like the top 10 and you go, okay, what's appealing?
Yeah,
and they
what are
always
people
put a little-
watching?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they
and
put a
we're
little
reading.
blurb.
Yes.
And you go, well, that's the film
That's
blurb.
interesting,
Does
you know.
yeah.
And I mean that what was the Chris Pratt Terminal List?
Yes.
That's another one.
Yeah.
Right. So you know, there are a lot of books you can find that way, or even more importantly, sort of stories that stimulate what you're interested in, you know, and so you sort of tend to follow that if you're, you know, I have to spend a lot of time killing time in an airport, so I'm always going through the not just the top 10, but also just looking at titles and going, is anything gonna grab my? But also, you know, we did a movie called Deepwater Horizon, which was a New York Times
Mark
article.
Wahlberg, brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, that was an article.
It was a New York Times article that was brilliant, and they had literally. The reporter had researched it so thoroughly, he knew what happened second by second, more than anybody else, for sure. And so when you make it, you know, we found that an interesting idea and it's interesting scale at which you can do it, right? Only the Brave was also an article in GQ. So you never know where you're going to find the things. But like Deepwater, one of the interesting things about it was BP did not want to see that get made.
Of course they did. Didn't look
of
good
course,
for them.
the film company was terrified that BP was going to sue them for every dollar they had and all this stuff. So the New York Times actually supported the film. It's a New York Times supported article, et cetera. And so the validity of the story was based on the reporter's work.
So therefore, you could go.
Yeah.
All right, you can't.
Yeah.
Please
Go
don't
ahead.
sue us. Try
you know?
sue us. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I kept telling the film company, let them sue us. It'll make a huge.
Yes.
We'll get much bigger
Any
box
press.
office.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they didn't, or maybe fortunately.
Right, exactly. And finally, then, you, when you're working with people, you're looking for those connections. You mentioned it earlier, especially when working with someone like Stephen.
Yep.
And is that something just important across the board within filmmaking? Is those relationships?
No question. And there's no question. I mean, look, I've done 9 movies each with Mark Wahlberg and Keanu. So they build on them, you know? They just do. You know, 5 movies with Michael Bay. So it's I think, what is it, 3 or 4 with Antoine Fuqua. So it's you find a rhythm, you find out somebody has like taste.
Yep.
And also, it's super hard. So if you find somebody who's great in the trenches, you want to work with them again. You know, the DP on this has done 5 movies with us.
Yep.
Not only 1, 2. Well, Bumblebee and this and the Transformers, but 3 other movies. So it's like, I know Enrique. I know I can count on him, and I know he's a lot of fun and keeping the set light.
So important.
You know.
Yeah.
And,
I think that's a big
look,
one, actually,
And look
yeah.
at the look.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Incredible.
Enough said. You know.
Yeah. Listen, Lorenzo, this has been amazing. Thank you for your time.
Great.
We
Pleasure.
really enjoyed it.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Nice
and
to
we
talk
love
to you
the
guys.
movies. Thank you.
Cool.
Awesome.
So there we have it. That was Lorenzo di Bonaventura. What did I tell you? What a guy. What an interview. So much knowledge for you. I love what he looks for in directors. I loved what he said about why understanding psychology is vital for producers. And also reading history books on filmmaking. I love reading biographies and books on filmmaking all the time anyway. So for me, that's like music to my ears. One that I can recommend is Mr. and Mrs. Hollywood. It is by Kathleen Sharp, and that really delves deep into the Hollywood history and how things got made back then. There are so many, though, so don't just take my word for it. So Friday, very special for you. Myself and Dom sat down with the director of Transformers Rise of the Beast, Stephen Capel Jr., and it stars Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback. Look out for that on Friday. It'll be dropping into your podcast of choices feed, as long as you press the plus button. I've noticed that. I don't know about you, if you've been listening to a new podcast and then you try and find it again and it's disappeared off your feed, you need to press the plus button on the top right, and that means you've subscribed, and therefore it'll come to the top of your feed. So do that with the Filmmakers podcast if you haven't already. Right, so that's it for this week. You can go out there and make your films. You can go out and make a Transformers film. Do you know what I mean? You can do it. You'll find out how Stephen Capel Jr. did that off the back of one indie film and Creed 2, and then suddenly he's making a Transformers film. I mean, he had some help, but still, doesn't mean you can't do that. And go out there and believe in yourself. And if you're lucky enough to rise up and do well, and I mean this, you need to send the elevator back down. All those people who are starting out, who would love that little bit of help. So if you do get an email this week from a young filmmaker or an old filmmaker but just starting out on this journey and just want some advice, do you know what? Be kind enough. Do it. Go, yeah, do you know what? I will reply. Yeah, do you know what? I'll jump on a Zoom for 10 minutes or a call. Why not? Send that elevator back down. I know most of you do it anyway, but I tell you what, it means so much. Enough of me whittling on. Like I say, we will see you on Friday for part 2 of our Transformers special. For now, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on Friday.
Tires matter. They're the only part of your vehicle that touches the road. Tread confidently with new tires from Tire Rack. Whether you're looking for expert recommendations or know exactly what you want, Tire Rack makes it easy. Fast, free shipping, free road hazard protection, and convenient installation options. Go to TireRack.com to see tire test results, tire ratings, and consumer reviews, and be sure to check out all the special offers. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.